Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of the Sports Insight with your host Amna Khan. And as you know, we give you sports information from all across the globe. You guys can surely reach out to us on our social media handle, which is at the rate of Indus News Sports, that basically works both for Twitter and for Instagram. But anyways, we'll go to the headlines first. And yes, from the world of football, Chelsea manages to beat Manchester City and win the Champions League final on Sunday. And yes, from the world of golf, Jason Kokrak actually managed to hold off Jordan Spieth to claim two-shot victory at the Charles Schwab Challenge. And yes, from the world of tennis, four-time Grand Slam single champion Naomi Osaka has been fined $15,000 for skipping her press conference following the first round of the French Open. And yes, from the world of Moto Gp, Quartararo actually managed to win the Italian Moto Gp. However, another death actually occurred. We'll surely talk about that, about Dupa Square. And yes, those were the headlines. And surely, what an exciting weekend. Yes, when we talk about Chelsea, how they managed to take that final of Champions League, of course, against Manchester City. It surely has been an amazing match and electrifying to a point, because finally we saw people. We saw 14,000 people in the stadium. And I think all those Chelsea fans out there would surely be above in the sky. But anyways, to discuss more in-depth analysis in terms of how things rooted for Chelsea and it really got to where they are right now as the champions of, right now at least being in that position of being the champions out there. But anyways, to discuss more of this, we have with us David Waldridge all the way from UK. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So David, what a night for Chelsea. Obviously, them managing to make that one goal and then sustaining it, and obviously in terms of the possession, in terms of every aspect of the game, I think they managed to get where they are. So what's your take on the entire match to begin with? Because Manchester City itself is a big name. Definitely they tried their level best, but it was, I think, they were not really out there.
Yeah, what a fantastic game, not only for the fans that were there in Portugal, but just the exciting flow of it. I mean, Chelsea had a masterclass defensive performance, but that's not to say they didn't create stuff themselves. And I think it all comes down to the gamble that Guardiola took by not playing in Fernandinho in that defensive midfield role. It left a massive gap in that area, which Chelsea exploited. But also, if you look at the game as well, for me, it comes down to what happened on the wings. You had the likes of Mount nullifying the threats of Zinchenko, but then also you had Walker, and you also have Havertz nullifying the threat of Zinchenko and Mount nullifying Walker, which left at the back Chilwell just be able to deal with Mahrez and James be able to deal with Sterling and not have 2-on-1 situations there. So in a way, Man City just could not use their flanks at all, so had to bring it through the centre. But then Chelsea had the brilliant centre-back pairing of Rudiger and Christensen, who came on as a substitute, and for me, had a fantastic performance. And with that back line, it got it to Kante, who, of course, got himself a man-of-the-match performance by controlling pretty much everything that Chelsea had to offer by taking forward to Man City.
Right, and talking about Kante, yes, he was playing as, he was taking the entire game in his own perspective, in his own way, from the defensive side to the offensive side. I think he put in his best. Not to forget that Chelsea itself, the entire team, the strategy with which they were playing was pretty much the strategy that back in the times, or back maybe a week ago, that's how Manchester City used to play.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at how Chelsea set up, if you go back and watch the replays, just the structure that the team had, they moved back together, they moved forward together. There wasn't almost I know Kante had a starring role, but it was almost like a well-oiled machine. They all worked together. They all did their jobs. They all did their roles, which allowed them to come forward into that gap that was left by Man City not playing a defensive midfielder.
Right. A lot of people have that question mark. As you mentioned, obviously, Guardiola I wonder what he was thinking of not having that defensive side. And we were looking more, and obviously Chelsea managed to exploit that and get that amazing goal to become the champions. And I think there are too many question marks for Manchester City. Because if we look back a few days ago when there was this FA Cup final, and obviously Chelsea managed to lose that, and everybody was like, and even they come up with the statement saying that, we're still focused more on the Champions League final. And a lot of people that I interviewed, a lot of analysts, it was a very, the rarest odds that I got was Chelsea may win on penalties if possible. But because Manchester City is super gelled in and they have that driving force that would actually let them take that cup.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's what Guardiola tried to do. He tried to play to Man City's strengths with that driving force, because if you don't play Fernandinho, then you allow yourself more creativity through Goodwin. But it just didn't play out this time. And I think Chelsea, in a way, had Man City's number. They went with their own game plan. They didn't go to play Man City. They went to go and play to their strengths in some ways. And I think that's what's lacked them in the past, that they didn't play to what they were good at. They played the opponent and didn't just set their stall out, which I think is what they did with the Champions League final, which maybe in previous finals they didn't do.
Right. And if we go back into 2020, that was the exact moment when Thomas Tuchel was actually, fired from the PSG side. And at that very moment, Frank Lampard's situation obviously was very tricky in terms of Chelsea not being there, able to perform as good as they can. And within 5 months, Thomas Tuchel kind of made that magic, made that spell, casted that spell, and managed to take Chelsea from down below on the table to the champions now.
Yeah, I mean, the achievement of that in itself can't be understated. I mean, take the Champions League out of the conversation for a second. To resurrect the Chelsea season the way Thomas Tuchel has, it's honestly incredible. And I think it's those little kind of changes he made in the side. For example, playing Rudiger more at the back. That was something which Lampard wasn't necessarily doing as well. And I mean, to get rid of Lampard to begin with is a brave decision, a fan favourite. So the pressure was on for Tuchel from day one. As soon as there was one loss for him, then the fans would have been on his back. But he structured the team. He almost rebuilt the team within one season, which is incredible. This is the kind of thing that you would almost expect next season for him to be doing, not within 5 months of taking over. Honestly, I think Champions League is such a crown on the overall achievement of what Chelsea have done with, let's be honest, half a season, not a full season.
Right. And even now, if you look back into PSG, I wonder what they would be thinking in terms of losing someone like Thomas Tuchel.
Well, what? I think the thing with PSG, and I think it's one of those ones for every manager that's been there, it is a dressing room of larger-than-life players. And I think that's quite difficult to manage. And I think that Thomas Tuchel has got Chelsea buying into what he's doing and believing in his tactics. Whereas at PSG, you look at the amount of coaches they've had, every single coach has had that problem with at least one player trying to get them to buy into what they're doing. So every time a new manager comes in, they're rebuilding all over again, a whole new tactical situation, maybe a few extra players, a few extra additions coming in. But I think the PSG, it's not so much the pressure from the board or the fans, it's pressure from the players in the dressing room. Whereas the Chelsea players, I think maybe there was that lack of confidence there. So in a way, it was almost a different kind of job taking over, because, well, you don't need to get the players to buy into what you're doing. You just need to give them that confidence, and in turn, they'll come with you.
Right. And if we talk about PSG, of course, too many superstars under one roof, and yes, too hard for the managers to handle. And I think too much influx of money, to be honest, because that is how we see it. But unfortunately, if we look back into their performance, if we go back into the semis, I think their performance was obviously one of the worst performances in terms of getting that red card, and not only that, in both the legs. So it kind of tells the impact, what the impact now they have, and obviously in the long run, I think they need to learn from their lessons.
Yeah, and you know what, I think, and this isn't meant as a negative towards the French league, but I think the Premier League is a lot more competitive. Right. So PSG will be playing a team and win 5-6-0 the week before a Champions League semi-final, for example, let's say. Whereas in the Premier League, these sides will be playing another big game the week before, maybe even earlier in that same week. So I think for PSG, it's hard to come from playing an average side to suddenly playing a really good side, whereas the Premier League teams are playing a good side every single week. And I think overall that gives you a better performance in Europe as well.
Right, and if we right now look back into, obviously we still there's so many questions and so many question marks on obviously Manchester City side, and obviously a lot of questions in terms of. Let's talk about the goal side. Obviously, when Kai managed to score that goal, don't you think Manchester City at that very moment still had that opportunity or the time, because when we look back into Manchester City, they're the kind of team that can easily make a comeback. And we know, honestly telling you, while I was watching the match, I was waiting for that very moment. I was waiting for those substitutions. I was waiting for that change of strategy that, maybe in the second half it would be Manchester City coming back, scoring 2 goals.
You know what? And for Aguero as well coming on, the fairy tale was written in the stars, but it just didn't happen. No, you're absolutely right. I think it was one of those where I was surprised, actually, how much space Man City were giving to Chelsea. And let's be honest, there were a few decent chances for Man City, but the longer the game went on and the longer they didn't have a reply, the more rattled they got and the more confident Chelsea got with their defensive display. I think if there had just been a sudden goal straight after Chelsea's by Man City and they had got themselves back to level pegging, I think Man City would have ran over Chelsea in the end, to be honest with you. But I think as the minutes passed on and Chelsea was starting to see that this plan's working, that their performance lifted a bit. And from that, actually, Man City, like you said, should have changed their tactics round, should have tried something different. And I think the injury to De Bruyne within that game is actually a bigger issue than everyone is making out to be, because that man is the string that holds the whole team together. His passing ability is second to none. And I think they missed that. They missed that person to anchor the midfield, to create those chances with those passes. And for me, I think that's where the Champions League final was lost.
Yes, I think when it comes to that assisting part, they definitely needed that. And of course, I think when it comes to a team, they need to keep in mind, obviously focus that, it's the Champions League final. You just cannot go unprepared. And I think the most prepared team were Manchester City. But that's at least my opinion. That's how I saw it, because I still thought that Chelsea still needs more gelling in.
Yeah, you know what? I think it was one of those ones where if you asked everyone before the game who was going to win, I think everyone probably said Man City if they were the favourites going in. And Chelsea just had a game plan, And I think that whether the question would have been if Man City had changed their tactics slightly, would Chelsea have had a plan B? Who knows? I mean, when Thiago Silva got injured for Chelsea, the warning signs were there that, we've got to change this defensive back line. But again, as I mentioned earlier, Christensen coming on with a fantastic substitute perforance. I mean, that guy was like a brick wall at the back,
Absolutely.
No, I think Man City, they should have just changed their game plan early on. I could see what they were trying to do by not playing that defensive midfielder, trying to create that more creativity, but it just wasn't working. They needed for me, I would have put an extra striker on. They were playing with no one up top.
Anyways, David, to be honest, I'm kind of short of time right now, but thank you so much for being a part of the show and discussing the Champions League final. And once again, congratulations to Chelsea on it.
Thank you for having me.
Right. So that was pretty much the update in terms of obviously the Champions League final, and I think it was an interesting final. What we'll do is we'll take a quick break, and once we come back from the break, we have more news coming up your way. See you guys after the break. And yes, welcome back from the break. And yes, before the break, we were discussing, obviously, the victory of Chelsea. We talk about the Champions League. Yes, they finally have the title. Not to forget that it was a very, very crucial match for the fact that Manchester City was surely the hot favorites. But anyways, as we give more information about sports, we'll just switch over to golf. Yes, as we discussed earlier, Charles Schwab challenge that was underway. And obviously, Jason Kokrak managed to get hold of it and get the title. To discuss more of this right now, we have with us Zain Tahir, who's a National Golf Player of Pakistan. Zain, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Alamdar.
So obviously, Zen, as we know, it concluded at the Charles Schwab Channel. So I would definitely want to start with that challenge in which Jason Kokrak actually managed to claim the two-shot win in that particular challenge. So how do you see this developing further? Obviously, and we'll surely come up to Jordan Spieth as well, because he was definitely behind him as well. So what's your take on this?
Well, it's one of the tournaments that has followed the second major of the year. That's the PGA Championship, and I'm glad we've been discussing golf all along the year.
Right.
And I don't think any of the PGA Tour tournaments can be regarded as a smaller one, because PGA Tour tournaments, may it be anyone, is the elite of golf that's going on. It's the pinnacle of the sport. But still, from within the tour, any tournament that follows a PGA Championship, or a major championship, I should say, it's something that the bigger players, much of the bigger players, don't show up. Although Jordan Spieth was there, Justin Thomas was there, but
Right.
very few amongst the top 20 guys. So it was a tournament in which the other guys have a chance who could not make much of the year. So we ended up seeing Jason Kokrak winning. He's a Canadian, 35-year-old, and in fact he has had 2 wins this year. And something important to note is that those 2 are his only PGA Tour victories. I've been lucky enough to have met Jason Kokrak in Saudi Invitational in Saudi Arabia, and he's a big hitter, and good for him that he ended up winning over the local hot favorite Jordan Spieth.
Right, and in terms of Jordan Spieth, obviously, it was very interesting because surely this is going to be Jason Kokrak's second title win. But obviously, in terms of Jordan Spieth, when we talk about the hot favorites, it becomes a very different situation in terms of how people see it. Like for instance, even if we look back into, because before the break we were discussing the world of football, but even in that it was the Manchester City was more of the hot favorite, but eventually ended up having Chelsea beat them. So how do you see these kind of events that would actually take, for instance, Jason Kokrak to another level of maybe more vision for him in the future in terms of being a golfer?
Well, good win for Chelsea, by the way. I haven't followed EPL much, but yeah, there was a lot of talk of the town, and
Right.
congrats to all the guys and all the fans. And yes, I think every match that goes on teaches you a lot of lessons. That's how the game of golf is.
Right.
Like if irrespective of Kokrak, I think he's having a good run this year, and he's having the best run of his life in the game of golf, because he has had 2 PG Tour victories.
Right.
He's currently ranked. I think he's ranked in the top 30s in the FedEx Cup, and he was nowhere to be seen before this year. He was not a guy who people would expect to come up in the FedEx Cup and play the playoff, and he's almost becoming a favorite now. And to win over the local favorite Jordan Spieth, what they say, that Jordan Spieth, this Charles Schwab Cup was held in Texas, and this is where Jordan Spieth won the Valero Texas Open in April. We discussed that.
Right.
So Texas is a place where he has grown up, and they said that Jordan Spieth is a guy, they love him so much that if he stands for mayor, people are going to vote for him, and
Right.
he's eventually going to win. So he's that kind of a favorite, and everybody was rooting for him. And
Right.
within that, Jason Kokrak himself said that I came and I broke the party, and I won. So yes, there's a lot of learning for both the guys. For Jordan Spieth, that you got to keep your composure out there. I think he's and for Kokrak as well, that you can win, and you just need the confidence within yourself.
Right. Even if we look back to the standings for now, if we talk about the leaderboard, where does Kokrak stand in terms of the leadership board, and in terms of Jordan Spieth? So how much difference do they have in terms of their leaderboard presence?
Well, that's a good thing to touch always, because I always look at the stats of golf and what is going on in the whole year, and how is the FedEx Cup going to come up, because we will discuss FedEx Cup is going to be something very interesting. It's a 4-match playoff. So Jordan Spieth, because of his exceptional performance this year, like in April we discussed that his winning drought ended with Valero Texas Open, and before April this year he won back the Open Championship back in 2017. That is something very big. And I must mention that he could not finish with a win this year in his hometown, but he has had almost 8 top 10 finishes, and he has had 4 top 3 finishes this year. And that's why Jordan Spieth is ranked number 2 in the FedEx Cup.
Right.
And with his 2 wins, Jason Kokrak, who's nobody was expecting from him, and he's not that big a name in the game of golf, but he is currently ranked, I think he has jumped to number 5 in the FedEx Cup from number 27 position. And I must mention that the top 120 guys in the FedEx Cup are going to play that playoff, which eventually gives you a $10 million prize, which is probably the biggest purse in any sports besides the unimaginable amounts in boxing. This is the biggest purse in the world of sports, not in the world of golf.
Right.
So that's what their rankings are. Jordan Spieth is number 2 and Jason Kokrak is number 5 after yesterday's win.
Okay. One more interesting question that actually came up to my mind. If we look back into the situation that, US Open is also the upcoming big one. So what's your take in terms of all these golfers preparing themselves to, to fight for that cup?
Well, whenever the major comes, it's a very interesting week in the game of golf. Something very strange, like Brooks Koepka is one of the guys who is, he doesn't seem to be after maximum wins on the tour, but he certainly seems to be after maximum major wins, and the number is 18, by the way.
Right.
And Tiger is at 15, and Jack Nicklaus is at 18. That's one guy who comes up. DeChambeau comes up with all his strategies. Definitely, when the US Open comes, it's considered as one of the most difficult majors, and it's one major that's not held at the same golf course every year. Every year the golf course changes, and it's a tournament that's kind of bound to be difficult. The greens are much faster. They don't have any hold, and the scores are not much lower. Anybody who's 6 under par or 7 under par ends up winning.
Right.
It's always a good development whenever the major is coming. So let's see how things build up till that time.
Right. And if we talk about Mickelson, obviously, as discussed earlier, he was surely, obviously now he has added this US Open to his schedule as well. So he's working on that as well, because obviously everybody will definitely look at, getting hold of that major side and improving their ranks.
Well, very interesting, Mickelson. I've been following him for the past 2-3 years. He has crossed the age of 50, and there's an elder tour of the retired professional golfers, not retired, I would say, but the professional golfers above the age of 50, and that's called the Champions Tour. It's a PGA Tour subsidiary for the guys above they're the seniors, actually. That's the right term for them. So Mickelson has literally been considering playing at the Seniors Tour, at the Champions Tour, and he says, okay, till the time I stop hitting these bombs, he has tossed a term called hitting bombs from the tee, because he's hitting quite long. And he says to everybody, till the time I'm hitting these bombs, I don't need to go back. And I think last week's win at the PGA Championship is something that has cemented his beliefs that yes, he can win even more. And that's the thing about these guys, Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson. By the way, he has had about 40 PGA Tour victories. Right. So these are the two guys who can, Tiger is injured, but these are the two guys from whom you can expect anything. And Mickelson has proved that last week. It was a game of the guys who are good at short game, and Mickelson is known as a short game genius. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Zain, for being a part of the show and discussing the world of golf with us.
It's always a pleasure, Zumdar. Thank you very much.
So yes, that in terms of golf, what's happening, yes, too many updates and too many information, and yes, everybody's preparing themselves for the upcoming major, which is going to be the US Open. But anyways, we'll quickly jump over to the next news from the world of tennis. Yes, talking about Naomi Osaka, who was actually fined $15,000 for boycotting the media. And, Naomi Osaka won her first round in the French Open, but she did not go and have him sat down in the press conference, which surely is going to be a big problem for her. And she was also threatened for the disqualification from French Open if she continues not to participate in the press conferences, because as per WTA, which is the World Tennis Association, they obviously want them to follow the rules and regulations of him. But on her personal perspective, Osaka also did not, she also posted on her Twitter account, one of the major things discussing the mental health issues. So in terms of her situation, I think she wanted to raise more awareness in terms of how she faces the media, but she's also going through some mental health concerns, because of which now the WTA has also said that we would like to discuss and address these issues so that their things are, much better in control for Osaka and obviously the World Tennis Association. Anyways, I'll quickly jump over to the Moto Gp update. Yes, the Moto Gp ended. Fabio Quartararo actually managed to win the Italian Grand Prix. However, there was this accident that actually happened, and it was fatal. Jason Dupasquer actually died in that crash, which was definitely one of the saddest incidents that actually happened. And people have been talking about, obviously, how Quartararo managed to win the race. But yet again, obviously, the race had this demise of Jason, which surely is going to be a very, very tragic news for the world of MotoGP. And not to forget that before this, obviously, Quartararo has now 105 points in terms of his 3-race victory in 2021. But anyways, guys, this was pretty much it from the world of sports. If you guys want to reach to us, please do on our social media handle, which is @Indus News Sports. Till then, take good care of yourselves, and bye-bye.